When the market is good, they become order takers, and then they become complacent. Comfort zone is danger zone.
If the industry actually started taking accountability for themselves, we'd be in trouble.
There is a huge difference from an agent mindset to an admin mindset. An agent mindset is how can I help find, how can I help solve? And the admin mindset is all about how can I not do that?
They said you never ever lose, you win and you learn.
I honestly think this is a really great industry.
My biggest strength is to have the courage to talk about my biggest weaknesses.
I've become a better dad, I've become a better leader, I've become a better husband, I've become a better friend by flipping the mask.
80% is mindset, but 20% is having an amazing skill and ability to ask great questions and to listen effectively.
Once you get ego out of the way, it's incredible what people can do.
I really want you to hear this. If you're an estate agent juggling a separate CRM, a standalone website, and these different marketing and prospecting tools, it's time to see what Iceberg Digital, the #1 operating system for estate agents, can do for you. At Gigs & Co. and within the Gigs Group, we use Iceberg, and it's absolutely out of this world. It's a complete ecosystem that makes your agency more efficient and more human focused. We've got AI scouts working behind the scenes, finding the full address details of properties on the market with other agents, matching them to our contact database, and even writing the email outreach. No human can keep up with that, and trust me, it's changed the game for us. So if you're prepared to make big changes to how you work and want to lead the way, just head over to iceberg-digital.co.uk today. And as a listener, use the code GIGSSHOW when you inquire for an exclusive perk on your setup. You're gonna love it. Welcome to the next episode of Estate Agent Showdown, and we are going global. Not just because we've got international speaker, sales trainer, an absolute legend, Tony Morris, on the screen. I mean, this is pretty amazing. It's like the Oscars, that you can't quite get to the venue. You can collect your award from wherever you are. But let's pretend you're in America, though, Tony. Let's just pretend for a second.
Fine.
And we've got an Australian/Englishman.
50-50.
50-50. He's travelled all the way across from Brisbane just to get to the show today here in Peterborough. I mean, that is commitment.
Absolutely. 26 hours in economy.
How about that? Just to come and spend the session with us. So for those of you who are listening, or those of you who are watching, you've got to stay tuned right now. So I'm going to ask you to do a quick introduction, because actually, in the nicest possible things, as things evolve, it's always good for the guests just to share what they're doing right now and tell our listeners a bit more about yourselves. And I'm going to kick off in the studio, if that's okay. So Steve, tell our guests, our audience, what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Steve Carroll, and I used to work in Peterborough, but in 2006 got taken over to Australia to help News Corp, so Rupert Murdoch's company, migrate all of his real estate print advertising online. And I ended up being the sales director for realestate.com.au, which is the equivalent of Rightmove. And my understanding here in the UK is Rightmove is not liked by everybody in the industry, and in Australia, not everybody likes realestate.com.au.
Well, there you go.
And so I was doing that right up until COVID, and since COVID, I've been running my own consultancy business with the Australian real estate industry. And the main thing that I help real estate agents do is stand out online. So every single real estate agent in Australia needs to have a digital shop window. So when people are researching which agent to use, my job is to help agents look $1 million when people find them online. And I just happen to be here in Peterborough, and it's an absolute privilege.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I can't claim that he did actually just specifically travel. Not that anyone would believe me anyway. Not at this stage, but maybe further down the line. But Tony, do you want to do a quick intro for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in person also in estate agency for 19 years. I set the business up in 2006. Personally, I've never sold a property except my own. I'm a buy-to-let investor, so I've got a couple of properties and obviously my home. But my first ever client was a really good estate agent called Green & Co, North London, award-winning independent, and I just fell in love with it. I love the fact that it was all about people. I know it's something, Matt, that you talk about, that we are in the people business, and that's sort of my area of expertise. So I just fell in love with agency, and since that point, I've probably coached about 400-500 different agents, be it franchise, independent, etc., self-employed. I'm a professional speaker. Been speaking for 13 years. I've written 5 books, and I just set up a company in January with Sally Lawson, who is the lettings guru, probably one of them in the world. I would say she's phenomenal, probably the most incredible entrepreneur I've been very fortunate to go into business with. And it's been an amazing journey. So Agency Titans is a mastermind boot camp coaching for estate agency owners, replicating Agent Rainmaker, which is obviously for the lettings market. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's a
that's
good
me.
definition actually, because I think a lot of agents out there, certainly in this country, would have been seeing some of that content. And
Mm.
actually, Sally Lawson was a guest speaker on one of my first events that I held in Boston 7 or 8 years ago. She was one of the
Mm.
speakers, and we had Karen Brady on the day,
I remember it.
and
I remember it.
and Sally Lawson, who back then I think she was just really getting into speaking and sharing. So at some point, I'll pin Sally down and get her on the show. Well, let's kick off because of all of your experiences and experience in this arena today, and from what you see out there in the market. And there's a lot of challenges in the
Mm.
economies that we're all in. I assume the same goes for Australia. But is estate agency or real estate agency success, is it 80% mindset and 20% skill, or the reverse?
Mm.
I don't know who
Great
wants to kick
question.
off. Tony, we'll go to you.
Great. So it's a really interesting question, actually. And something that I coach and talk about is the market actually is irrelevant because you build your own market. And I think where a lot of estate agents have fallen into a big trap is when the market is good, they become order takers, and then they become complacent. They lose maybe the actual skill of a sales professional. And for me, you've got to be an order maker. And to be an order maker, you've got to think differently. And mindset then is absolutely critical. And a lot of people don't like that because it's out of their comfort zone. But you know, the three of us know, right? Comfort zone is danger zone. And that's where going out of that is where growth happens. So I think people are quite reluctant and nervous maybe to become an order maker, and that's why they're relying so heavily on a busy market, which is just, it's not practical because we know there's peaks and troughs, right, in every single market you operate. So I actually think it is 80-20, but I think the key is 80% is mindset, but 20% is having an amazing skill and ability to ask great questions and to listen effectively. And I think those two skills are often missing as well in agency. You've got to have both, right? You can't just have the will, you also need the skill. But yeah, I think it's a really good question, good point.
Yeah. Yeah. What about yourself, Steve?
I think the skill is something that real estate agents need to keep exercising and getting better at and focusing at. So, real estate changes every single year. I mean, if I look at the Australian real estate industry, the industry that we had in 2025 was different to 2024, was different to 2023.
Yeah.
And so if real estate agents are doing if they're doing today what they were doing in 2022, they're already behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
So whether or not it's 20% or 25% or 30%,
Yeah.
I encourage anybody in real estate to keep honing in and getting better and opening your mind, being curious and learn new stuff. Mindset is incredibly important, but I'd like to throw a third one in, and that is just how you feel, that well-being thing. And I'm sure we'll touch on that today.
We're definitely going to touch on that today.
But I think it's about skill set, it's about mindset, and it's about well-being. How well are you looking after yourself? And that's
really
the
great
third
point.
piece that I'd throw in.
Do you know what's really interesting, actually, Tony? I mean, you and I are largely based around the UK. I know you speak around the world, but UK estate agency tends to frown on training.
Yeah, no.
And is it because of the models that were created over the years where you went to training as almost like punishment? And in the Australian commission-only kind of model, it's like, well, if you don't do it, your competitors are, and you want to get better, sharper, so you can win the listing or get the buying agent situation in place. What are your thoughts on that, Steve?
I reckon there's a bit of age demographic coming into what you've just said.
Okay.
So I was born in the 1960s, so I'm in a position of authority to say this, but I think the agents who are in their 40s, 50s or 60s, many of them, not all of them, many of them are still of the mindset training is punishment. It's when you've missed your target, you get sent to training, right? But what I'm noticing in Australia is those agents that are in their 20s and they're in their 30s, they see training as similar to going to the gym.
I was just about to use that analogy.
You do it because you actually get better.
Yeah, build the muscle.
And one of the big changes I've seen in the Australian real estate industry over the last 20 years, as the older demographic, the baby boomers, the Gen X, as they've retired and you've got this younger generation coming through, I think the appetite to training is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I can't comment on the UK market, but that's what I'm seeing. And that's why Australia is awash with real estate trainers, be it Lee Woodward, Josh Fegan, Tom Panos, Michael Sheargold, the list goes on and on and on. And you know what? They're all doing very well in business because the demand for training is really high.
Yeah, it's interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Tony?
Yeah, it's a really good point Steve's made. And I don't know really why, if you look at, say, the US market, it's seen as, it's seen so positively that you're investing in yourself, you're investing in your business. But I think the reason in the UK, not just in real estate, and a lot of clients, I work with about 50 industries, is I think the mindset is, if I need training, what am I doing wrong? And I think the focus is on the negative rather than the positive. And there's a couple of points on this. My attitude is always, if Novak Djokovic still needs a coach, what excuse has anyone got? And he does that because he always wants to be the best. And he knows there's going to be players like Alcaraz, Sinner coming through, and he wants to still be the GOAT. And then I heard this years ago. I can't remember where or who by, but it was, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And what I find fascinating is whenever I do coaching, if there's a room of 500 people when I'm speaking, the ones that contact me first are always the top performers. And they'll say to me, Tony, you mentioned that book. Can you repeat it? Or you talked about this concept. Can you just give me a practical way of I can implement it? And these are the top performers. And isn't that interesting that the best performers are the ones that want to keep learning and growing?
But that's so interesting, Tony. And I'm just coming back to that. That's where the opportunity is in the UK. I can't speak for Australia, but I can speak for the UK, where you could argue that 20% of agents are in that mindset space of, I want to get better, I want to learn. And I'm a great believer that skill can overcome fear. Because I actually genuinely believe that most people practice on the public rather than in private. And actually, if you practice in private, you're going to get better working with the public. So, when it comes to that, I think there are huge opportunities for this country, and it's evolving now. I think you met Adam Day and people like that when you were over here last, Steve, whereby there are, for owners, there are more models catering for agents to go alone.
Yeah.
Be out there and do it for yourself under an umbrella or under support, whichever. And I think that's then giving agents this kind of shift in mentality. And I'll just give you an example. One of the companies that I own is a mortgage company. There was a really lovely mortgage advisor, very nice family man, the most risk adverse person you could ever come across, right? His wife, even more risk averse. And as we broke the company up for specific reasons, I said to him, you should really strongly consider going self-employed. And anyway, he was not really keen on the idea. And eventually he came round to the way of thinking. I met his wife and he came through. And I'm not kidding you. It's literally changed his life in the last 3 months. he's written double the number of, he's doubled his average case size, for argument's sake, on mortgages per written. He's doing videos off his own back. He's actually putting automation into our system, which nobody's ever done before with regards to mortgages. This guy's changed his mindset and also his skill set and belief. And I think the UK is on this journey at the minute with agents who are looking at this as an actual career. They're looking at it as a livelihood. Their soul and heart are in this industry, rather than waiting to be told what to do and working in an environment which is slightly more confined. They're looking beyond that now, and there are a lot more offers out there. Do you think that's where the opportunity is, Tony?
A billion%. Look, the market's shifting, okay? It's becoming a very big self-employed market like the rest of the world. I mean, I've trained real estate agents in about 25 countries, and I think all of them, except the UK, has been purely self-employed. So therefore, they've got no choice. If they want to thrive, they have to be learning and investing in themselves. And, we know in the UK, like Adam Day, like Keller Williams and like Yopa, these are, and Purple Bricks, these are companies that are always looking for entrepreneurial individuals that want to learn, want to grow, and want to build something very, very special. And I think on that point, when I work with a lot of clients, right, and they'll say to me, I don't want a door knock because I'd hate it if someone knocked on my door. My immediate response is, but you're not the customer. So how you would respond is sort of irrelevant, right? We have a different lens. And to reinforce this point, I make live calls on stage. I'm on stage in front of 500 agents and I call their lost vows live. Why do I do that? Because I have to step out my comfort zone if I'm going to teach others to do that. And I also want to reiterate the point to them that if I can do it on stage in front of 500 people, what excuse have they got when they're in an office with 2 people that's listening? And it just breaks through that mindset of he can do it in front of X amount of people. And I fail, right? But there's great lessons. There's really good lessons. And then obviously I have some success.
What a great thing to do.
Yeah, fantastic. No, and take my hat off to you doing that live. And just one of the things that Tom Panos often talks about is make rejection your best friend.
Yes.
And I really like that. Make rejection your best friend. And
which goes against the grain, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It does. Now, what's interesting, and so one of the things that I think has encouraged people to embrace training in Australia is the way that realestate.com.au is set up. So the realestate.com.au is our right move.
Yeah.
And there are so many tools that realestate.com.au give to individual agents to pump up their brand, pump up their presence. Yeah. So realestate.com.au are saying to the individual agent, and there's 55,000 of them in Australia, we'll give you the tools to get stronger, better, and it's up to you whether or not you want to take that on board or not. So I think that indirectly or directly, deliberately or not deliberately, the number one portal has actually encouraged this culture of learning. Yeah. And maybe there's an opportunity for one of the portals in the UK to do the same.
Well, I was on the Right Move webinar only recently. I'd done a slot on one of their webinars. Really enjoyed it. And do you know, I think you said earlier about the guys in the crowd, 20% might come up to you afterwards, or those ones are the top performers. And, we want, I honestly think this is a really great industry. It's a great livelihood as well, if it kind of fits and aligns with who you are. But I just want to kind of go back a step. You mentioned well-being earlier, Steve, because it's hard to have the right mindset if you feel shit, or if you don't feel great about yourself, or you don't know how to deal with maybe rejection, but more importantly, life's challenges, which, let's be honest, there are more. It feels, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but it feels like there's more than ever right now. I don't know how it feels to you. So if you can figure that part out, the mindset and then the skill set, it's almost like going in tandem that way. Just want to. Sorry, Tony, I'm going to come to you in a second. But you mentioned to me before we started the show that, and I think this might be a bit of a shock to our audience. So I hope you don't mind me diving into this. But in Australia, there's been quite a high level of people suffering within the industry with their mental health. Is it largely guys, or are we talking a kind of an even split? Or
so
I'm just curious.
It's both males and females.
Burnout.
The difference is males are often too ego driven to say, I'm feeling pretty shit about life at the moment. There's something in our DNA which says it's weak to actually say, I don't feel good.
And I think in Australia that might even be more the case.
Probably. Females tend to be more open with saying, I'm just not feeling myself. I need some help. But what was really interesting is the real estate industry, no different to America or the UK. It's very much dog eat dog. Brands are trying to beat the shit out of other brands and so on and so forth. But the one thing that they all came together on 2 or 3 years ago was the creation of a movement called Rise. And Rise is about helping agents, property managers, leaders. If they're feeling not good about themselves, then there's something that Rise, as a registered charity, can give back to those individuals to give them a helping hand. Now, whether or not it's Ray White or LJ Hooker or Rain and Horn or Harcourts, and they're all up against each other fiercely in the living room, is the one thing that they all lean in to support. Now, why do they do that? Well, they do it for 2 reasons. The first reason they do it is because it's just the right thing to do. You don't want people in the industry committing suicide. And you know, this is happening in the Australian industry. You've got one extreme where people are having a bad morning. You've got another extreme where they're saying, my life is just not worth living. And so the real estate industry have got together, created Rise to do something about it because it's the right thing. But the other reason they've done it is they realise that if you have a healthy industry, they're going to perform better. And if people perform better, then your Ray Whites and your LJ Hookers make more money. So there is a correlation between a healthy industry where people are looking after themselves and performance and profit. And it's a movement that's getting bigger and bigger.
What do you think of that, Tony?
Well, I love the Rise concept and charity. I think what a wonderful thing to encourage actually people to speak up. 3 years ago, I got diagnosed with bipolar. And 2 years ago, I got diagnosed with ADHD. And when I got the diagnosis, I felt much better about it because I just thought, am I a bit mad that one day I can feel like $1 million and the next day, for no reason, I just feel like crap. I don't want to get out of bed. And I sort of thought maybe everyone feels like that. But something I've always been is very open. And I do it. I'm very vulnerable and open because, well, I don't know. That's just the way I am. I'm very sensitive. I'm a massive empath, so I take things to heart. I remember a girlfriend once cheated on me, and I made myself so ill over it. I got a stomach ulcer. And I still have to take medication today. Yeah, honestly, I've seen her quite recently though. She looked horrendous, so I'm quite happy about that. but it's interesting though because I'm very open about telling people that I've got bipolar because I think and I've got strategies I use to navigate it. One of them is looking after myself, right? Going to the gym often, eating well, blah, 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 blah. One of my favorite books is called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. If you've read it.
Yeah.
Love
It's
it.
amazing.
And two things
Very
they say in
simple.
it. It's so simple. And Charlie Mackesy, the author's got the most beautiful, soothing voice who narrates the ebook. But there's 2 things he says in it that I love. One is the boy's speaking to the horse and said, what's your biggest strength? And the horse says, my biggest strength is to have the courage to talk about my biggest weaknesses. And I love that. And the other thing he talks about in
Well, that's just
mindset
sent a little chill
is
down my
powerful.
spine, that one.
It's powerful,
That's very
isn't it?
powerful. Yeah,
And then
yeah.
the mole said to the fox, are you glass half full or are you glass half empty? And he said, you know what? I'm grateful that I've got a glass. Isn't that powerful? And it's just a completely different lens, but it's also about being open. I mean, I don't know the exact stat, but isn't the men under 24 have the highest suicide rate? I believe, in the UK. I don't know the exact numbers, but that's what I believe. And I had a client, unfortunately, that 2 years ago, that a gentleman in the warehouse committed suicide. He was 26 and he killed himself. And it was only then that they took wellness seriously and they started getting wellness coaches in. But isn't it sad that that fatality had to be
Well,
the catalyst?
and I don't think we can afford to wait for our country to pick up that initiative. I think if you're a business leader or a business owner, if you're suffering, if you're, you're finding yourself, there are ways and means to find that support, but it makes such an incredible difference to how you perform by how you feel.
Absolutely. Can I just add something?
Please.
And so there's a real estate leader in New South Wales, and he won't mind me telling this story. He won't mind me mentioning his name. His name's Chris Henry. Great guy. And Chris, if you're listening to this, great admiration for this leader. So he was telling me that he was wearing his mask inside out. So let me explain what he was explaining to me. He said, I had this mask on and I was putting out on social media one side of the mask that I wanted people to see. I wanted people to see that I was super fit, I was super strong, I was successful, I was making money, I was living my best life.
Yeah.
And he said the most powerful bit of coaching he ever had was when a guy called Jet Xavier, who's also a great friend of mine, said, Chris, what I want you to do is I want you to take that mask off that you've been trying to display to the world, and I want you to turn it round, and I want you to show the world the real Chris Henry, right?
Whoa.
And so he was telling me that piece of coaching made him change his whole website. His website was about the tight black T-shirt and the guns on, the muscles out, and I'm a superhero leader and I'm living my best life. And he turned his whole website around to say, this is me, and like everybody else, I have my ups and downs. He changed all his social media to say, this is me. It's not all about glory. It's not all about success. I have shit days like everybody else.
Yeah.
And he was saying to me, I've become a better dad.
Yeah.
I've become a better leader. I've become a better husband. I've become a better friend.
Oh, man.
By flipping the mask and actually telling people what's actually going on. And Chris Watkin talks about this so much on social media. The messages you send out, if it's all about just pumping up your tires, then you've got it all wrong.
Yeah, for sure. I'd argue that. Go on. Sorry, Tony.
Just to add to that, that's so powerful. Actually, I got goosebumps as you were talking about, Chris, and that's phenomenal. I wrote a talk when I got diagnosed called The Two Tonys: Speak Up About Mental Health in Business. And Speak Up is the acronym I use for, like, S is share, P is pause, so on and so forth. And it's my most popular keynote because it's when I stand on stage in front of 1,000 people and I look like this positive motivational speaker, which is genuine. I am very positive, but what they don't see, the hidden Tony, is I have bipolar. And I think when I shared on stage, people come up to me after and said, the bit that stood out for me is your vulnerability and your courage to share that. And I don't see it as very courageous. I just see it as being real, being genuine, being authentic, because isn't that what people want? To see the
Tony,
real,
honestly, I think many a man has lost his life without knowing who he really is or who they really are. And I mean that as in, we're taught to perform at school. We're taught to perform in work, to do the job that you're expected to do. So that has to come with some kind of performance. In sales as well, it's even more of performance because you're very focused on an outcome and you're trying your best to win something, whether it's trust or the listing. So you're spending so much time. This is what's been geared up in our industry. You're spending so much time coming away from who you really are because you think that's the way it needs to be. But actually, we're in a world now which is it's transparent. Transparency is it's almost like, for me, the transparency is essential. So You mentioned Chris. How old's Chris? Do you mind me asking roughly?
Chris Henry, 46, 47.
I think I could have guessed his age, just not knowing who he is. But I thought I could probably guess his age. I think the 40s takes you to another place, and I hit 50 this week, Tony. I'm not sure where that place is going to take me, but
looking good.
But I've been trying to unlearn my old habits recently with some support, because I found myself throughout my life wanting to please people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when you try and please people, you end up making yourself a little bit more unhappy.
Yeah.
And actually, as you're doing that, you're further eroding your belief in whatever it is you've got to offer, and you've turned your mask inside out.
Yeah.
So you end up putting as Chris would put it, I put out what I wanted people to see, and ignored who really I am, who I really am. And I think it's very easy to be guilty of this. So there shouldn't be any guilt felt, if that makes sense. Because I did go through a period of feeling a bit like I've lied through my life. Does that make sense? Yep. But I haven't. It's just what I knew and what I'd been conditioned to do. And I think this is a real turning point for a lot of people if they're willing to get involved. And I'd love to maybe get the two guys that you mentioned, Javier and
Xavier and Chris Henry. Can I
Please
just tell you a funny, well, not a funny story, but there's a real great lesson in this. So one of the big jobs I did at realestate.com when I was there was we built out a product called Agent Profiles. So we wanted every single agent in Australia to have their own profile on realestate.com.au. So think about having your own LinkedIn profile, but it sits on realestate.com. Yeah. So if I'm a seller and I'm selling a house in Peterborough, I can check out this agent, this agent, this agent, and this agent, and I can look at their profiles and read about them and understand. And that is something that realestate.com give 55,000 agents free of charge. So anyway, I was part of the team that built this product. So there was a lot of research involved, and we went out to hundreds, if not thousands, of Australian homeowners and said, if you are reading a profile about an agent, what is a real turn on and what's a real turn off, right? Because if we know this, then we can obviously go to market and tell agents the things to do and the things not to do. The biggest turn off was having an out-of-date photograph of yourself, right? And so if you're 60 and you've got a photograph of your profile from when you were 43, because again, it's the mask.
It is the mask.
You want to put out to the world that I'm 43, but actually you're 60.
Yeah.
But the feedback we had from thousands of homeowners was a great way to lose trust.
100%. It makes sense.
And so I had this homeowner who said, so I called this agent in, and in my mind I was expecting this particular agent to walk up the steps and knock on the door, and the agent walked up, knocked on the door, and the first thing I saw was her profile picture on realestate.com and the real her were about 15 years out of date, right? So my relationship has kicked off
on a negative.
On a negative.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I do in my talks is I say to people, if you were born in 1963, be proud of the fact you were born in 1963 and have a photograph that demonstrates who you are today.
It's such a good point. I mean, no one would know, right? I actually don't have glasses or a beard or this hair. I'm completely bald and overweight. But you wouldn't know that, right? But it's aren't people so obsessed with how they look? With the
you only have to look on social media, like the external validation people are looking for.
Correct. It's really
the
sad.
internal loss.
Correct.
It's
funny.
External validation versus internal loss.
And it's really funny, actually, something Stevie just said. So I'm changing my website as well. I'm just having my new speaking website
He's
built.
taking that picture of when he was 21 down, isn't he?
He's texting his website designer right now.
You can see him. He's messaging someone there.
Get rid of the 8-pack. Get rid of the 8-pack. That's not there anymore. But But you know what I'm doing? My spin on it is this: is it's not about, look, I'm successful, I've got this. It's, I want to help you achieve your goal. I want you to have the car you want, the life that you want. Not about, this is what I'm doing, the show off, Tony, because that's not what it's about. It's, how can I, how can I give you value and serve you to help you achieve whatever goals they are?
But you
And
know
I,
what, Tony?
you know,
I've watched you recently over the last, I don't know, not long, probably a year or two, maybe. And I've just, and it's really struck me that things have really picked up for you. I'm making an assumption there, by the way. But it feels to me like it's more you today, maybe. Like I'm watching what you're doing, and you're really living that kind of version of you, which is connected to you. And I think, it's very tempting, isn't it, to put on the filter.
yep, very much so.
To wear the mask on the
so.
outside and try and be someone that you're not. I mean, there's a old saying, isn't there? Faking it to make it.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
maybe that's one of the challenges, is that people actually, you shouldn't fake it to make it. You should, there needs to be a better quote than that needs to go out there. But there's a better way.
When I studied NLP, one of the things I remember learning was act as if. So when I started my speaking career 14 years ago, and I was petrified, I've never done it before. I mean, I looked like Elvis Presley on stage, my legs like shaking like a crazy man, because I was petrified, right? Dry mouth, sweating, all the things you'd expect. But I remember thinking, act as if I'm the best speaker they've ever seen, and I was still so uncomfortable. But I think, muscle memory, right? I'm now done 800 talks. Don't get me wrong, I still get butterflies and I still hope I deliver, but I feel completely different. But at the beginning, it was a facade completely. And even my TikTok channel that you mentioned earlier, I felt really uncomfortable going up to a random stranger and going, sell me this pen and I'll give you £20. He could have punched me in the face. And do you know what I mean? It'd be like, here's a pen, put it in my eye. So I felt quite nervous. And I remember one guy, I was in Carnaby Street, which is where all these sort of influencers hang out. It's big footfall. And I went up to this guy, said, sell me this pen. He said, F off. And I was like, all right, mate, chill out. But, it was a bit like, wasn't expecting that. But, you do it because you've got to step out your comfort zone and just put yourself out there. Do you know what I mean? And be real.
I do. I mean, I think just sort of capping off this sort of section, really, before mindset is definitely well-being. And like, it's a lot harder to build on the mindset and the resilience and the things that you're going to need, the confidence, if you aren't looking after yourself. It's like trying to ski uphill, isn't it? It's, if you're drinking too much, taking drugs, or you're really abusing yourself, then you can't expect to onboard things which are going to make such a difference to your life.
How you look on the outside is how you feel on the inside, right? So if you look a complete mess, then typically, but equally, they'll go back to Steve's point, is sometimes you could look fantastic and there's also shit going on behind it. Well, there will be, right? It's life. But I think, if you're going to get into the right state of mind, you have to be looking after yourself, whatever that looks like, just getting fresh air, walking, spending time with, your mates, walking your dog, whatever it might be, to get yourself into that calm state so you can perform at your best.
Well, if you're at your best, prospecting's not such of an issue, is it?
Correct. It's wonderful. It's a game.
And I would still say, you mentioned, if you're going to go out there and start your business, you can't expect the business to find you. You have to go and find the clients. You have to be in the market. And whether you use the tools that they're offering, and these different places like on Rightmove, there's lots of tools, lots of things available. There are very quick hacks or quick wins to get into any market, but most agents don't take that. And it's quite interesting. A good friend of mine in Norfolk's kind of got into a model, and he's done a estate agency for a number of years, came out of it, he's just come back in, he's chosen a self-employed option, and bless him, my observation so far is he's doing everything other than the thing that I just mentioned. And there are two types of agent. There's the ones that like to paint the office and make the office and the website and everything's got to look good. And then there's the ones that go out and hustle. And they go out, and I say hustle, but I mean go into the market and help people. What is the biggest reason do you think that agents don't go out into the market and, we can say, ask for the business just for the sake of making a point? What do you think, Steve?
Well, I think it's that fear of rejection.
Okay.
And, I mean, it's the fear that you're going to be told no. And you've somehow got to get over that.
Got to fall in love with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think one of the things that I notice with real estate agents, especially the older generation, and again, I can get away with this because I'm part of that group, is we're experts at procrastinating.
Yeah.
We're brilliant at putting. I'll get round to going to the gym. I'll get round to doing some prospecting. I'll get round to creating some video content that adds value to my community.
Yeah.
And before we know it, it's 6:00 on a Friday and it's weekend time.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the fear of rejection and it's the love of procrastination.
I think two very, very interesting ones. I mean, just on rejection in itself, or the fear, is that a lack of training? Because just going back to your point, Tony, about you going up on stage for the first time and kind of almost like manifesting the position of being an authoritative, experienced speaker. Is it the lack of training that's stopping people going out there to fall in love with rejection? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think it's definitely part of it, right? But you've got to, you've got to burn. You've got to get stung, otherwise you're never going to grow. I love the point, Tom Panos, make rejection your best friend. I love that. I think it was Nelson Mandela said this, that he said, you never ever lose. You win and you learn. And for me, the lessons are countless, but you've got to be looking for the lessons. And I think it's definitely fear of rejection. I agree with Steve, but I think it's other bits. I also think it's they don't want to look stupid. They don't want to not be able to answer a question and panic, right? Like a deer in headlights. And I think some of them are scared that they think it's being pushy or desperate. I think Tom Panos called it commission breath, which I love. Love that. But the way I coach this is forget it's not about you. It's about them. So when you're knocking on a vendor's property that is sticking on the market, they need to move, but they can't because the agent's not doing what they should do. They're saying, please help me. So if you turn up and say, I'm going to help you and let me explain how, give me 1 minute where I'm going to explain 7 pillars of marketing to help you achieve what you want, why wouldn't they invite that? And my whole focus is I'm putting a light on the vendor rather than on me of I'm scared, I'm going to get rejected, I'm going to look silly. Forget about I. Everything is about that customer and changing that lens.
That change of lens is something that I share and try to encourage people to look differently at, because a lot of agents, when they get the appointments, they go out there to win the appointment. Or to win the business, as opposed to building trust and winning the relationship. So that's a really interesting one around that. I mean, it's interesting. Like training for me has been pretty important for not just growing my own business, but for growing myself personally. I'm always keen to learn. It's one of the things that you observe in training, Tony, is that people quite like to listen and learn, but they don't necessarily go and do what they've learned and listened.
Yeah. Look, you're a professional footballer, right? So training for you was absolutely, you built the discipline at that level, right? I know the amount of work you would have done every single day. So you've already had that mindset programmed, or you already had it anyway to get you to that level. I think, look, we all know this, right? If you don't implement one thing within 24 hours of training, typically you're not going to do it. So my key message always, whatever it is, when we leave that conference or when we leave that session, highlight the one thing you're going to do first and do it in the first 24 hours. Get the result. And the result could be a lesson. It doesn't have to be a win. It's a lesson or it's a positive outcome. But learn from that, tweak it, change that, improve that, and then go for the next thing. Once you start to master that, I think we almost think I'm so overwhelmed. I've got so much now. Where do I go? And then they do nothing. I mean, Agency Titans, we do a 4-day boot camp for owners, and we literally give them business in a box. We give them the toolkit to be mega successful. But the feedback we get is they feel overwhelmed. It's like, where do I start? So that's why we finished the session day 4 on let's set out your roadmap. So you don't have that fear on the Monday of where do I start? We've actually outlined your roadmap to help you implement what you've just learned.
Two quick things. So I talked about the creation of agent profiles, and that involved me going over to the States to spend a bit of time at LinkedIn's HQ. And I asked this question to the research people at LinkedIn. If there's one bit of advice that you can give real estate agents back in Australia about their LinkedIn profile, what would it be? So anyway, they did a bit of research, came back and said, right, we've looked at everybody in Australia that has a profile that has real estate in their title.
Yeah.
And 78% of them have got incomplete information in their contact details. So 78% of real estate professionals who have a LinkedIn profile in Australia have incomplete or incorrect information in their contact details.
Wow.
So one of the things that I do when I'm speaking to real estate agents, which is something they can do there and then, get your phone out, have a look at your contact details in the middle of the talk.
Yeah.
Is your email address up to date, or is it the email address you had when you worked at your ex-employer?
Yeah.
Is your mobile, are the links to your website and your Facebook, are they working? And if they're not, let's fix it up right now. And that's a great way of just getting that one action that Tony just talked about.
Yeah,
and look, I don't know what the figure is in the UK, but I tell you now,
probably going to be similar.
I bet it would be very, very similar. And you know, the good old days of yellow pages, where if I wanted to get hold of your business, I'd find you in the big thick yellow pages. That doesn't exist any now. People look for contact details through platforms like LinkedIn. And what a way to get off on the wrong footing if you've got inaccurate information. And sorry, the other thing I think is really important is one of the great things about social media, and us three are doing this right now. We're spending some time to give back to the industry, for those that are watching, information. And I met a young agent a few days ago in Stamford. She's an EXP agent, and she wanted to have a coffee with me because I was in town. She said, if there's one bit of advice you can give me, I'm a self-employed agent. I've been with EXP for 12 months. What would it be? And I said, every week, spend half an hour giving the community of Stamford some useful information that makes them smarter and better. That might be a video, it might be a post. Now, if you do that every single week for half an hour for 52 weeks, you're going to build up a reputation of being a thought leader, a helpful real estate agent, and completely opposite to what Panos talks about. You're not a commission breath agent. You're a giver of useful information agent. And Sod's Law says at some point you'll get paid back for that effort and energy.
Sod's Law does say that, and I've experienced that myself. You know, I think I find it really interesting hearing that, and what you just said about taking action, Tony, in the event rather than after the event. And I think that's a really good thing for someone listening to this who's picked something up from the conversation that we've had so far. And it could be anything from your well-being to, you know, it could be to some of the conversation that we've had thereafter.
Funny enough, in Titans, we make them accountable in the room. So we actually, once I demonstrate some live calls in the room, they do it. They phone lost vows. They phone an online vow that they didn't get hold of, or they did get hold of, but it didn't come to fruition. So they actually go away with results, because then the mindset shifts of, you know what, this is easier than I thought. Because don't you agree? Sometimes we put it off, but when you do it, it's not that bad. Like the gym, I can't be bothered. I'd rather sit there and eat some chocolate. But when you go, you know what? It's not that bad, and you come away feeling fantastic. The dopamine, the endorphins are released, right? So I think it's the idea is typically worse than the reality. I think that's really, really key point. And it's about having faith in the process. You know you can do it. Just go and do it. and start
I
to
think
see
having
the
faith in the
results.
process is very important, because it's very easy to get distracted today, isn't it? You can literally start the day with the best of intentions. Things happen, things go wrong. The phone comes out. Next thing you know, you've lost a couple of hours, and they could have been a couple of hours helping more people or doing something with a bit more discipline. And just coming back to what you was talking about in the room training and obviously taking action. Do you feel that agents are really clear about their day-to-day from your experience? So, for example, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but I'm a great believer that most of your problems are solved in sales if you have enough good conversations. So, for example, if I was starting my agency today, I would be making sure that I speak to enough people to see who I can help and so on and so forth. The social media profile, the leaflets, the all of the other stuff, that's a process, and I need to get consistent at doing that. But whether the sharp end feels to me like it's still in conversation, that's where sharpening the sword needs to be. Do you feel like that's going to become more important because of the direction of travel towards AI? Just a thought on that. And then my only feelings on that are based on when Rightmove came in 1999, 2000 in the UK. Within 2 or 3 years of it being integrated by the major brands and most of the independents, 4 or 5 years in, agents were very reliant on it. In fact, Rightmove became their best negotiator. And actually, it's not really there for that. And I really see the hard yards and the distances that agents can create between them and their competition through the number of people that they help and speak to.
It's really interesting. So my wife and I, we've just sold our house in Brisbane, and one of the things that we're very, very serious about is spending the next 2 or 3 years in the UK, and so we're actively on the market looking for a rental. And I've been round all the real estate agents in Oakham, in Uppingham, and in Stamford, and said, I'm looking for a rental. And the standard answer is just keep an eye on Rightmove because all of our listings are there, right? And there closes the conversation. If they ask me 3 questions, one could be, are you looking to actually buy a property? The answer would be, well, actually, I am, right? But we never actually get to that because Rightmove is the armchair that 90% of them fall back to. Just keep an eye on Rightmove, and if there's anything that takes your fancy, come and see us. And I think to myself, that is a problem.
Frightening. Absolutely frightening.
We know, but Tony, are you surprised?
No, not at all. It's frightening, though. I mean, it's pathetic. I mean, you go back to the basics, Steve. You were saying about have the damn contact details on the website, right? I mean, that's insanity. But it then gets even worse. They get a Rightmove. I don't know what they're charging these days, but I imagine in the realm of £3,000 per branch a month, right? So we know the cost of each lead. How many agents don't even phone those leads? It's insanity. And I've been in a branch quite recently.
Isn't it like over 50%? I can't remember.
It's a joke. I think it is. It's a joke. But I remember I was coaching a lady a couple of weeks ago, and it was about 6 o'clock. She was sort of wrapping up to leave, and a Rightmove call came in. That has the different ringtones. And I was Rightmove, and she was like, "Right, guys, anyone want the lead?" And she was like, "I can't bother. I'd rather go to the pub." I'm like, "Are you insane? Without that." Because you're so reactive. Without that, you got no chance. How can you grow? And we spent the morning talking about all her goals, her dreams, her aspirations. But a lead came in saying, "Help me, I want to sell or buy," and she's out the door to go to the pub. It's insanity. So it's a different view.
When I was at realestate.com, Tony, and obviously the industry don't like realestate.com for all the same reasons as Rightmove, all the same reasons. And we'd often sit in meetings at realestate.com.au and say, who is our biggest challenger? What is the thing that we should worry about the most? And the answer would always come back to, if the industry actually started taking accountability for themselves, we'd be in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, the reception ladies or guys and the property managers that I've seen over the last week, by pushing me back to Rightmove, all that does is make Rightmove more valuable. And that's exactly the same behaviour in Australia. And what we always said was, God, can you imagine a day when real estate offices actually took accountability for having conversations, accountability to asking questions, accountability to finding out what people's stories are and putting it into a CRM and actually following that up. God, if that ever happened, we'd be in trouble. And that's what makes the real estate portal so strong.
It really does. And like when you're just hearing that, I've got so many things going through my mind right now because, you know, I built my career on the back of having great conversations. And if I'm honest, my X factor is great conversations. Like I've built some businesses, it's gone well, there's other stuff, but it really is about understanding people's needs and then finding a solution. I see that as the game, you know, the challenge. Like I'm sitting here when Steve's talking, going, we've been around the agents here and there, and I'm thinking, someone's just sent me a lead today and they need to sell a house in Bluntisham. And I'm thinking, where's Bluntisham compared to where he's at? Because I'm thinking, he might want this house, you know. And I'm thinking to myself, how can I help Steve? The agents are admin fucking mindset. Excuse my French. They are admin mindset. There is a huge difference from an agent mindset to an admin mindset. An agent mindset is all they're interested in. All they're interested in is how can I help find, how can I help solve, how can I help get, you know, it's all in that. And an admin in the admin mindset is all about how can I not do that? It's like how can I get somebody else to do it? How can I make this really easy? You know, and actually it shouldn't be like that. And this is where I was trying to say that I think if you're really in the market today and you want to be different and stand out in every single conversation.
Yes, totally agree.
That is where you stand out.
Totally, but
that's where you stand out.
There goes a little bit further, right? Because the better conversation, opportunities will arise. Yeah, that someone's going to say things they weren't expected to say, and I call this your opportunity antenna. We've all got one, but 99% is switched off. And I'll give you an example. So I was working with a great agent called Ensign Brown. You might know them. You remember those guys, Neil Wise. And I was door knocking with one of their values, a guy called Dan, and he didn't want to do it. He was like, I'd hate it if someone knocked on my door. I was like, Dan, you're not the vendor. Shut up. Let's do it. So anyway, we did it. 2 hours, didn't speak to anyone, and we finally got someone to answer the door and listen. And he invited us in. Property was on the market, 1.3 million with an agent. It was sticking, so he let us in. We're sitting there having a coffee, him and his wife and me and Dan. And I noticed like 10 dogs running around the place. And I said, you clearly love dogs. And they said, well, actually, I run a dog sitting business. And I was like, oh, cool. And she started telling me about it. And then moving to Cornwall, which we didn't, this Ensign Brown obviously that's not their market. But I said, look, we can speak to great agents there and see if we can help. And I said to her, are you going to continue your dog sitting business? She said, no, I'm retiring. I'm done. And that was it. So we won the instruction. Dan did a great job. We got the instruction. We went to Costa Coffee after to sort of dissect. And he was like, it was easy, wasn't it? I was like, mate, it was easy, but you did it. But I said, you missed the opportunity. And he was trying to rack his brain. He couldn't think. And I said, there were 10 dogs in that house. Do you reckon some of the owners of the dogs live locally? Now, do you reckon the local people that have dogs are quite likely to be in a property, and some are going to sell, some are going to rent, etc.? And I was like, you've built a great rapport. You've got the instruction. Once you exchange, ask to be introduced to her client base, which he did. And on the back of it, right? But I told that at a conference, and this guy at the front said, Tony, forget that. I'd have set up a dog sitting business. I was like, mate, that's gold.
Do you know what it's funny, really. It also, helping them to negotiate on their onward purchase as well.
Absolutely. Of course.
But this is what happens when you're in the conversation.
Correct.
And present in the conversation rather than you're on the surface, which is what's happened with your experience. They're on the surface of a conversation. It's almost like, the lights are on and nobody's home. you know, and I feel the lights aren't on in 80% of our industry when it comes to being in the moment, in the conversation. Just going to come out just for a second on, because I'm a great believer of skill and courage. Because I think even with skill, you need some courage. And with courage, you do need some skill. But let's just do an either or, skill or courage. I'm going to ask you some funny questions and real life scenarios of estate agency and give you some examples of situations. And I want you to tell me whether you believe it's skill or a courage issue. Okay? So, Tony, listen out. I hope you can hear me okay. Asking for a higher fee, skill or courage?
Well, it's both, but I'd say courage.
Courage.
Courage, brilliant. Challenging a vendor on a price strategy / reduction. Asking for video test. Oh shit! Sorry.
I would say skill on that one.
Go for it.
Yep.
Skill. Asking for a video testimonial.
Skill.
Skill.
I reckon it's just courage. Okay. It's just like asking for a date, isn't it?
Yeah. Or calling unconverted valuations, which is what you've done in your training session.
Correct, but it's both, because yes, you need the courage to do it, but if you're doing it badly, you're getting the same result. And that's why I said skill with testimonial. I go, do you mind doing a review? That's not the best way to ask, but I get the courage part. You've got to have the courage to ask the question in the first place.
I think if you've got the skill, you'll have the courage to do it.
Yeah.
If you're really nervous about, so I'm saying skill.
It can work both ways.
Yeah. Good point. Because if I think about whatever I'm doing in life, if I'm confident I've got the skill, then I just have the courage to do it.
Well, I was just thinking this, because when I was listening to your example of going out with the, there's a few examples. You've gone out with a guy, Dan. You've gone and knocked on a load of doors for 2 hours. You've got to one. They've answered 1.2 million pounds. Yep. It's probably going to be an 18 grand fee, 20 grand fee. Yep. They'll probably sell that if the right price strategy, get themselves a fee, and that's resulted in 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours work, whatever it is. Yep. And a well-worthy thing to have done. He didn't have the courage, but he had the skill. Is that right?
Yeah, I think he lacked the courage and he lacked the belief that it would work. And I think that's where the lack of courage came in. And I think, once it worked, it was like, you know what? I got to do this more often. It's the Roger Bannister, right? Second Bannister beat the 4-minute mile. 2 weeks later, I think it was David Landis or John Landis beat it. And then within 6 months, 15 people beat it. It takes one to prove.
Can I quickly chime in? So in Australia, you've got realestate.com, number one. You've got Domain, which has been just bought out by CoStar, number 2. You've got Homely, number 3. And then number 4 is view.com, right? So you're the 4th player. So my youngest son, Tom's at university in Melbourne. He needs a job just to help with his beer money. So he gets a job working for view.com, right, as a cold caller. So he rings real estate offices representing the fourth website and says, would you like to put your listings on view.com? I'm saying to him, Tom, that sounds the most horrendous job in the world, but if you want to do it, do it. So anyway, he rang me about a month ago and said, Dad, do you know this individual? And I said, yes, I do know this individual. And if you're thinking about ringing him, I wouldn't, because right, he's short, he's rude, blah 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 blah. My son cuts me off halfway through and says, Dad, I already rang him and he's giving me some business. Right.
Love it.
Now so you talk about courage is one thing. You talk about skill, right? But I think there's a third word, and whether or not it's ignorance or mindset, or lack. And so it's so interesting that if it'd have asked me, I'd have said, "Don't ring, go on to the next one." But because he didn't know the guy and had no fear, he just picked the phone up and got the business.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's no preconception. I must add to that, right? This was quite funny. So one of my old clients called Knight Knox, Jeremy Knight and Owen Knox in Manchester, they sold property investments, and everyone moaned about the leads, right? It's the whole leads are crap. So over the weekend, Jeremy Knight came up with this genius. He said, I'm going to print out all the leads again. There were folders of leads. I'm going to print them all out. I'm going to take the bottom ones to the top. There's no notes on them because they're brand new leads. And guess what? They had the best week ever the following week because in their brains, brand new fresh leads. Isn't that
do you
clever?
know what? Do you know what, Tony? This is really, it's made me think of some. I was in a conversation earlier, and in estate agency offices up and down the country, this will resonate. When someone new joins the business, they sell one of the oldest listings. Why?
Because no one else is doing it.
It's the same, and it's
the same as Tom and View.com.
It's exactly, they don't know any different.
He doesn't know any different.
And that don't know any different mindset is such a great place to start from. How do you combat that though when you start to get involved and you start to listen to the environment and they'll say, well, you know, you won't sell that one because the price is too high.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. And I tell you, a lot of technology companies, and a lot of them are based in Melbourne, they have a strategy of getting rid of people after a certain number of years, right? Now, whether or not that's right or wrong, that's not the debate. But they do it because the importance of bringing new blood in and fresh blood and fresh ideas is so critical.
Oh, I love that.
KPMG...
love that.
So KPMG have a compulsory retirement at 55. You cannot stay at KPMG above the age of 55. They basically make you retire, because if you're hanging around till you're 67, 68, you're stopping younger people coming in, and younger people like my Tom at View.com have got the hunger and the ambition and the passion.
It just makes me think of the kind of, if you think about people selling their homes in the market today, who do they need representing them? And you do think that there's a lot to be said about we used to call them an expert, and then you break that word up. X is a has-been, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. You know, so because the experts think they know it all, they're not open-minded to learning, and it does happen with more years ahead. What hurts home sellers more? I wrote this question down because I've been spending a lot more time teaching agents in conversations. So, but what hurts home sellers more? Poorly trained estate agents or agents who avoid difficult conversations?
I'd say the first one, poorly trained, because if they're poorly trained, they're going to have terrible conversations.
That's a logical answer. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I mean, if they're poorly trained, the frightening thing is they could cost that vendor tens of thousands of pounds if they're poorly trained.
And I wholeheartedly believe that.
Yeah. And if they avoid the hard conversation, then it just prolongs the whole settlement period, the whole sale.
Yeah.
Because everybody's just operating with misinformation.
Yeah.
I find it. I mean, we just sold our property in Brisbane, and the difference between, and with the knowledge that I've got to be really careful with what I say here because my agent might be listening to this, right? But without my knowledge of real estate, I reckon we would have left 100,000 Australian dollars on the table. If my wife and I had taken the guide of the agent, we'd have left 100 grand, 50,000 pounds on the table, and so I'm very fortunate that I was able to not make that not happen because of the job I do.
Absolutely.
But 99.9% of Australian homeowners don't have that luxury. Same in the UK. And it's pretty frightening how many homeowners today will actually leave money on the table because of untrained real estate agents.
Who aren't prepared to have the difficult conversation or overcome objections from a buyer, or make sure that they're using the skill of negotiation to drive up the value of the
Correct.
house.
As Tony said right at the beginning of the podcast, if they're just order takers, they're going to leave money on the table.
Order makers.
If they're salespeople, they're going to extract every dollar for the benefit of the seller, and that is surely the agent's job.
But why is the industry not solving this problem, do you think, maybe in both countries that we're referring to here in this show? What are your thoughts, Tony?
Why don't they invest in their staff? Is that your question? Well, two reasons really. One, it's a mindset. I think maybe they're stuck in the past, dinosaurs, and I don't think they need it. And I think the second reason is counterintuitive, that they're not doing very well, and therefore they don't think they've got the money to invest, which we know is counterintuitive, right? How are you going to do better if the team aren't trained? And I think Richard Branson said this, right? A lot of people think, well, look, if I train them and they leave. And Branson said, what if I train them and they stay? What if I don't train them and they stay? That's a really good point, but I think it's a belief that the owner, the leader, doesn't buy into it, and it could be for multiple reasons. But that's what I believe.
So one of the things I noticed in Australia is if you have a selling principal, so the principal, the business leader, also sells, then he just runs out of time to sell, to train his people. Yeah, if he's an out-and-out principal, so he doesn't list properties anymore. So he's the leader of the business. So coaching his team is 35% of his working week. Yeah. So if I look at offices in Australia where the principal is a listing agent as well as the principal, in my humble opinion, they often run out of time to look after their people versus the principal who says, I'm not selling anymore. My job is to be the Brian Clough. I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think of an English football manager, and nothing came.
I nearly come up with Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah. I mean, Thomas Tuchel doesn't play centre forward and try and train the other 10 players. He's retired from playing, and his job is to.
Well, they're getting fees in, and they're doing a good job. The trouble is, they see that as more important than having 10 people doing the job better than them and producing multiple levels of income and helping 10 times more clients. Yeah. But just I want to kind of touch on a couple of other little points just before we close off. I kind of got to the point about AI. I'm not sure whether I covered it enough, but do you feel like with the advent of, I mean, let's be honest, people are going there now first. So Google's actually, a little bit, but maybe it's going to fall behind potentially Chat GPT or whichever AI platform people use. Do you feel that it's going to be good for the industry in terms of an experience for the client?
Well, I think it will be good for the industry. I don't know about, yes and no. So funny enough, I got 2 gigs in America, one in January and one in August next year from ChatGPT. No, because I always ask the question, who recommended you to me? I'm spending a lot on Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, Google ads. So typically that's made where they find me by the perception, who recommended you, right? And both of them were ChatGPT randomly. But I digress. So your question of AI is, some people don't want to talk to people. So those people, you're giving them another medium to buy, and they don't want to speak to people. So I think AI is great to accommodate those people. But as a salesperson, AI is going to be phenomenal if you're using it the right way. So one of the things we teach at Titans, right, is to build a funnel and to send out an e-guide and get hundreds of leads in a matter of days. You can't possibly have the resource to handle those. So using an AI, we've got one called Letty that our clients use, has the conversations, because you train them, both written and verbal, to turn that lead, that e-guide lead, into a booked appointment. AI, you can't do that without the benefit of something like AI. So I think it's a positive for the salesperson. I think it's a positive for the customer that don't want to speak to people. There's many out there. And I think it's just going to make you more productive. So you can actually spend more time serving your customer rather than doing the admin stuff that negotiators like to hide behind.
Mm. Mm. What are your thoughts, Steve?
Well, I think AI is we can sit here in 12 months' time and it'll be a different game in 12 months to what it is today.
Yeah.
One of the behaviours I'm starting to notice is sellers. So I'm a seller in Peterborough, and I have no idea which real estate agent or real estate brand to use, and I just simply say to ChatGPT, I'm currently living at 5 Dogsthorpe Road, Fletton, right? This is a link to my property. Which real estate agent or which real estate brand have got the expertise to sell this type of property? And I can see switched on consumers using AI to find information. And so one of the jobs of a real estate agent is to have a digital shop window online, so artificial intelligence can tap into that and bring it down. So you're the person that they're recommending, and I think that's I think that's really gonna change the way that, and it's different. It is different in Australia because Tony, you probably know this. I know you do, Matt. You don't choose an office or brand to sell your house in Australia. You choose an individual agent, and so you don't choose Ray White. You choose Phil Brown, who just happens to work at Ray White. So the importance of that individual having an online digital shop window that AI can then take information and share when that question is asked is going to be a big change.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been do you know what? I just looked at the clock. I thought, blimey, we've rattled through probably just over an hour and 10 minutes. Hour and 15 minutes.
What I find is very, and Tiny won't see this, but the guy who's sitting in front of us, who is clearly a lot younger than myself, right? Every time we talk about that older generation, he's nodding his head. And we talk about get rid of people at 55, and he's thinking, get rid of them at 40. I can see him, right? Yeah.
He's definitely thinking that. I can tell you. But what I think this has covered quite a lot, actually, maybe more than I was expecting. So Tony, obviously, I want to say thank you hugely.
My pleasure.
For jumping on and giving up your time today.
Can I finish off with an advert?
Yeah, of course you can.
So I run the biggest real estate charity event in Australia. It's a bike ride that raises millions of dollars for a children's charity. And every single year I take a bunch of real estate agents across Thailand, and we don't, it's not a race. We have conversations like this because we're cycling at such a slow speed that you can. And we've had a sprinkling of UK agents join us over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. I'm looking for some more. So if any real estate agent from the UK,
when is it, Steve?
We've got 2 next year. So the November 2026 is already sold out. So we cap it at 40 riders. And so we opened a new one, which is October 2026, and we're about 70% sold out. And the only people who ride are from real estate, and that's how I got to know Chris Henry. That's how I got to know Jet Xavier. You just cycle and talk, and you raise a shitload of money for kids in need, and it's a great one. So if anybody's listening to that, to this podcast or webinar, however you distribute it, and you're interested, find out more. If you're a hardcore cyclist, you're not invited, because the only people that we attract to this bike ride are people who just want to do something completely out of the norm, out of their comfort zone.
And what if they haven't got a bike? Because it's easier to get one when you're over there. Can they
No,
hire a bike?
so we use a proper bike company. So one of the things that I've done when I set up the ride was I wanted to take all ego out of the ride.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want
playing field.
I didn't want people bringing their own expensive bike,
Yeah.
so we hire a bike company. Everybody cycles using the same type of bike, and it's just one of a number of things that I do to take ego out of it. Because once you get ego out of the way, it's incredible what people can do.
So Steve, I can help you. So 3 of Titan's clients, we've got 23 agents now in Titans, 23 logos, and 3 of them are cyclists, average cyclists, but not professional. They just cycle as a hobby, as do I. I took it up 6 months ago. So I'm very confident. Let me tell them about it, and very confident.
I'll send you a couple of links.
I'll pop you in the and Bertie will add this into the show notes as well. So if you're listening, watching, you'll see this in the notes for this particular episode. And Tony,
am I allowed? I mean, I'm not an agent, Steve. Am I allowed?
Oh yeah, no, you are. So absolutely. So yeah. So Lee Woodward, who you probably know, he's one of our regular riders. Jet Xavier, who's another real estate coach, is another. And what's really interesting about the ride is we actually have more females than males.
Well, don't get me tempted. No, I'm only joking. My wife's watching. Tony, thank you, Steve. It's been a great episode. Loads of learning. Take action. Write down what you're going to do.
Highlight one thing right now.
Absolutely. And we'll see you on the next one.